My name is Kenneth J. Van Dunk Sr. I live in Ringwood at 21 Horseshoe Bend Road.
How long have you lived there?
I've lived there since '96. I purchased my house.
And you're senior?
Yes, and my son, of course, obviously is junior.
And do you have a nickname?
Jay, or Jay Bird.
And why do they call you Jaybird, do you think?
That I don't know. It's always been a nickname.
For how long?
Since I can remember.
So, some people call you Jay, and some people call you Kenny, and some people call you
Jay Bird.
Jaybird.
Yeah. Yes.
Which do you prefer?
It doesn't matter, you know, it depends on who I'm with,
Uh-huh.
you know, but I answer to all the names, you know, it's just something you get used to after a while, I guess.
Absolutely. Your parents, what were their names, and how did they meet?
My father is Kenneth Van Dunk Jr.,
Okay.
and I'll explain that in a second, and my mother is Glenda Edith Van Dunk. The difference between my name and my father's name, I have a middle initial. The letter J, that's my middle name. He has none.
Okay.
So henceforth, I'm a senior and he's a junior, and sometimes it gets chaotic with people trying to explain it.
I know, that's why Jaybird, I guess, is good.
Yeah. Well, he has a nickname too, so.
What's his nickname?
Dokes.
Dokes. So what was his father's name then?
Kenneth Van Dunk.
Kenneth Van Dunk. So that was the senior.
Yeah, I'm named after my
senior.
father's father and my father, but my mother's mother wanted me to have a middle name. That's the story I remember. And it was just the letter J. That's it.
Interesting.
It stands for nothing. Just J.
How long were your parents married?
My mother passed away in 2005, so they're married at 45 years.
45 years.
Yeah.
Is your father still with us?
Yes, he's still with us. He's at my house right now.
He is?
Yes, he is.
And how old is he?
He'll be 75 next month.
And he's well?
Yeah, he's hanging in there. He has his issues, but he's hanging in there. He's tough.
That's good. Yeah. How many siblings do you have?
One brother and one sister.
And what are their names?
Andy Van Dunk and Deidre Van Dunk.
Now, are you the oldest?
Yes, I am.
And how old are you?
I'm 50 years old.
50 years old.
Yes.
This year?
Yes, this January I turned 50.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mid-century.
Yeah, AARP paperwork keeps coming in.
Do you know where the name Van Dunk originated from? How
You
far
know,
it
some
goes back?
people have done a history, but I never got involved in that end, but I just know what I remember. It just seemed like we've always been here from my point of view. You know, it seemed like, you know, there were generations long before I came here, and there's been a lot of generations since, so.
So how many generations have you lived in Ringwood? You know, your family and your ancestors, would you say?
To my memory, I'm going back to my great-grandparents, which would be my grandchildren right now. They're great-great-great.
Right.
You know, so, and I knew there was people before. I just don't remember. I remember some of the old-timers talking about it, but, you know, you lose some of these things as you grow older, then you just have your own memories.
Right. It's almost like it's been there forever.
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me, like it never wasn't there.
When you were growing up, what was it like living in Upper Ringwood?
It was home, you know. It's, to an outsider, it might have been awkward or different, but to us, it was just at home, you know. It was just the way who we were, you know. It's hard to explain, but maybe we lived, actually now, we still live, some of us live a little off the grid, maybe. People think it's off the grid, but now it's coming back into. But, you know, we lived off the land. That's what we did, you know. We used things that were there at the time, and that's how we lived.
And you hunted and
Hunted, fished, collected fruits, nuts, berries. It's not like we had to, but it's just a thing that you grew up with. And in the old timers back then, when I was a kid, they would, you know, make you dessert, or they'd can it or preserve it. You know, it was just what it was. I think was them passing down the way they grew up to us.
Right.
You know, and I remember going picking berries and, you know, hickory nut picking, all that with my mother and my grandmother. You know, it's just something that you did. You didn't think nothing of it. It's just who you were.
Right. Do you feel like now you can just go out and find all those same abundance of hickory nuts and berries?
No,
and,
it just, I don't know, you just don't see it as much anymore, you know? I don't know why, I can't say why, I mean, I can only guess, but it doesn't seem like it exists anymore.
Right. Things change.
Yeah, things change,
Yeah.
I mean, I grow a lot of things in my own yard for my own purpose and my family, so, you know, but
And do you can them and you winter
my wife
everything?
does all that. She cans and freezes. I grow things that you can preserve for a long time. I look for certain vegetables or fruit that lasts longer in the freezer or in the shelf. You know, it's just, I guess, my way of going back to my roots.
Right. Which is, I think, so important, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, now it's the in thing to do,
Yeah.
but to me, it's just what we always did. So
It was just your way of life.
yeah, and it still is. You know,
Yeah.
now it's the cool thing to do,
I
but
know.
it's just the way we lived. You know.
Now you're cool.
Yeah, I don't look at it. I just try to be me. That's it.
That's important,
You know.
right? So, what was it like going to school in Ringwood, and was that a good experience for you?
Yeah, it was for me. I mean, the only thing I could say about going to school in Ringwood, there was maybe at the time, looking back on it, there was like a little population explosion because they were just in the process of building the addition onto EGU at school. Robert Erskine was overcrowded, so we used the Lutheran church.
Oh, really?
And then also the Presbyterian church on Carltondale Road, that's where I went to kindergarten. And I did second grade in Peter Cooper. Then in third grade I did in Robert Erskine. Fourth grade I did in a Lutheran church. And then I went back down to down to EGU for the fifth. And then 6th through 8th I went on to Ryerson, which was just finished.
Right.
And then I went on to Passaic County Tech and graduated in 1977.
And what did you study at the Passaic County?
I took welding up.
You took welding.
Yes.
So, are you a welder?
I was by trade, but then I left the welding for a long time, and I was doing construction work because it was a better living for me.
Right.
You know, so I had to go where the money was the best.
And what type of construction work did you do?
What they called heavy and highway. I was a union member, local 754 in Rockland County. I was a laborer. We built bridges, roads, buildings. We did it all. You know, whatever they needed you for that particular job, that's what you did.
And are you still doing that type of work?
No, I was injured 5 years ago in a cave-in, and I got busted up pretty bad, and now I'm just kind of a stay-at-home dad, and I have a handicapped son who I don't say I look after him, but I get him off to school, and I get him off the bus, and my wife, you know, she goes to work every day, and she don't have to worry about it. I mean, my mother used to do it, but since she passed away, it's just, it's worked out now that I'm home, that I'm able to do that, so that takes a lot of weight off our shoulders.
Yeah. So, how old is your son?
He's 29.
He's 29.
Yeah.
And when did you meet Debbie?
I met her in 1973. I believe it was they had like a 14th or 15th birthday party for her. I forgot the ages. And then later on, a couple weeks later, I met her at the Queen of Peace Carnival, July of 1973. I met her there again, and soon after, we were boyfriend and girlfriend, and now we're married 32 years this year.
So, did you have a big wedding?
Yeah, it was big at the time, but you know, we were so young. I mean,
How old were you?
We were both 18.
You were both 18.
Yeah, we were both 18. We've been together since July of 1973.
What do you remember most about your wedding day?
You know, I hear them talk about it. I really don't think about it much. I just know it was such a long time ago. We were so young. And one thing I remember my grandfather gave me the gift that he gave me, and I remember having this discussion because another part of my life is our daughter was born while we were both in school, and I wanted to have her there, and she was there. So
how old was she at that point?
She was not even a year old yet.
And what's her name?
Belinda.
Belinda.
Yes.
And your son's name is Kenneth?
Kenneth J. Right.
Do you have grandchildren?
Yes, I have two. I have Michael Morano and Leanne Morano.
And how old are they?
8 and 5.
And how do they make you feel?
Oh, I tell you, that's all the difference in the world to me.
Mm.
I mean, you go through tough times, and these kids, they can bring you out the worst of times. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes they can take you there. But my grandson, he's my best friend. You know,
Yeah.
that's my boy.
Oh. What's your earliest childhood memory?
Wow. Earliest childhood memory. There's many. I mean, I remember next door to where my sister lives, on the other side of the house. That's where my grandmother lived, my father's parents. And you know, basically at the time, my sister wasn't born. My brother was younger than I was. Actually, before my brother was born, I'm almost 4 years older than Andy.
Okay.
Where I was the baby. You know, because my father was. We were staying with his parents for a while. Then I remember we lived with my mother's parents for a little while, you know, and then we moved in our house. I think my brother was just a baby. He's 47, so that's how long we lived in the house that my parents live in now.
And that's, where is that located in Upper
That's
Ringwood?
Van Dunk Lane,
Right.
4B Van Dunk Lane.
Mhm.
It's not Van Dunk Lane, the newer section of the how-to. It's the
Mhm.
older section.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's actually just below Wayne's house.
Right. Now, in Upper Ringwood, where did that name come from to call a section of Ringwood Upper Ringwood?
That's a good question. I don't recall that. That
Uh-huh.
seems to me that's happened in the last couple of years since since all the problems began up there with the Superfund site again.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know where that came from. I've asked people that question. I really don't know. It's not a bad name. Don't get me wrong. I'm curiosity. Is like, where did that come from?
Right. What was it called before it all of a sudden
The
became
mine
up-
area.
The mine area.
The mine area. Everyone knew it as the mine area.
And would that be more comfortable to you to know it as? I mean,
you know what? I have no problem where I come from.
Mhm.
You know, but it's, I don't know. I don't think much about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my own belief is, no matter where you're from, if you're a good person, you're a good person. So
Okay.
it doesn't matter. So.
Yeah. The mine area is a very historic area of Ringwood. I guess the most historic.
Yeah, but you would never know.
Yeah, and how do you feel about that?
That's always been on my mind. You know, it's like, and I don't blame any particular group or any group in any special group, but just with all this history that's up there, and it's just like it was all just overlooked.
Right.
You know, that area never could seem to get the recognition, and we're so close to the state parks that area deserved.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was a kid, a lot of those buildings still stood up.
Right, from the mines.
From the mine, yeah, they were still, you know, they weren't being used other than local people used them for whatever, but they were still up, you know, and then they got burned down or they knocked them down or whatever, and you know, and as you got older, it's like you learn about all this history, and there's so much history up here, but no one seemed to do anything with it.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what the mine area, the historical, area of the mines, what it was like, the names of the mines, and
Well, I know some of the names, and they might not be the names that are written in some of the literature, but there was, let me see, there was St.
Take your time.
George,
Mhm.
there was Canna Mine, and there was Peter's Mine.
Mhm.
Then there was little offshoots of all those.
Mhm.
But when I was a kid, I remember, you know, I was young, but I remember prior to the dumping when people used to swim in them. I was too young to swim in them, but you know, it was basically just large holes in the ground that fill up with water, and people would swim in them. You know, and that was prior to the dumping.
Yeah, because when mines are closed, that's what happens. They fill
Yeah.
up with water, and it's usually very, very clean water.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, you talk prior to the dumping. Maybe I don't know if you'd want to talk about when that started, or if you'd want to get into that at all.
You know, I mean, there's no secret here. Everybody knows what's going on. So, I mean, I don't feel it's necessary unless you want to ask me. I don't feel it's necessary because if you want to know what's going on, there's so much information out there now. It's out there. It's just all you gotta do, look for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I said, I do remember prior to the dumping.
Right.
You know, and what it was like.
Right. and the streams were all clean and
Oh yeah, I
yeah.
mean we were typical kids. I mean we grew up. I mean our backyard was the woods, and you find water, you're gonna find kids. And that's what we did all the time. I mean year round, we'd find a reason to be on the ice and the water and the brooks. You know, you hunt for stuff, look for stuff, like all little boys did.
Yeah.
You know, and then I guess eventually it just kind of faded away. You know, learning what I'm learning now. Now I understand why. So
Right.
maybe someday they can get it to a point where it can be like it used to be. I'm not saying it's going to ever be like that, but maybe some of it can come back. Who knows?
Yeah, it's good to have that optimism.
Yeah. Well, you have to. I mean, it's there. It's not going away.
Hmm.
And living up there, what are you going to do? You got to live with it. It's just the way it is. I mean, you can't run away from it. It's right there in your backyard. So you deal with it
Right.
best you can.
Right. When you do you have a lot of family reunions?
Well, mostly on my wife's side.
Right.
Actually, we had a 50th birthday barbecue for my wife yesterday. It's mostly her family, what's
Mhm.
left, because she'll be 50 in a couple weeks, but we had our barbecue because we have our aunt and uncle are celebrating their 50th in a couple weeks, and we
Mhm.
won't be home.
Hmm.
But she's, even though she's turning 50, and her family's older, a lot older. You know, she's the baby.
She's a baby.
Right, so she has cousins is my father's age. So usually what we do, my family, whenever we have something, it's usually her family and some of my immediate family. We all get together.
Mhm.
It's usually at our house. It's no big deal. It's just eat, eat all you want, enjoy yourself, and take some food and go home.
Do you talk about just family stories or any kind of you know
Once in a
family
while,
histories and
I started learning some. Actually, right now, my father's been having some difficulty with his health, but he's been telling me things that I never heard him talk about prior to. He's telling me, like some of the things he did when he was in the war, in Korea, and certain things he's been saying that I never asked him before. He never talked about, but he's saying it now. And then when my mother, prior to her dying, she would talk and say things, and if I wasn't there, my wife would tell me, "Well, your mother said this or your mother said that."
are there any stories that come to your mind that they passed on to you, maybe through Debbie, or about your the history or the culture, or that that comes
Not
to you?
that I could think of, but in that line, I always remember my grandmother, my mother's mother, all the old timers. They always say we had Indian blood in us.
Mhm.
I don't know to what level, and some of the things that are going on today, I don't remember that on that level, but I always remember hearing that. It's the way we grew up,
That's your history,
That's right.
right?
And if he looks like my grandparents and some of the other it's one big family pretty much anyway. But I mean, the features alone would tell you something. Like I said, and we've been here since the beginning of time. There's never a time since Ringwood was founded
Hmm.
that we weren't here.
I know.
So
And a lot of the people worked in the mines.
yes, a lot of my grandparents did, and everybody pretty much made a living like that.
Mhm.
Just the way it was.
And, did any member of your family ever work for the Hewitts that you know of?
I can't remember off the top of my
Mhm.
head. Especially my father's family, they were, they all worked, and everybody didn't say much, as far as that,
Right.
They kind of did their own thing, much like my father does still yet today.
Mhm.
He's, my father's very, very family oriented. When I say family oriented, his immediate family. I mean, whatever it is, that's where his concentration is. It's on
Mhm.
his immediate family. His father was like that. I'm like that.
That's your tradition?
Yes, especially to my father. My mother's side, there was more women.
Mm-hmm.
So there were certain things you did with my father's side, and there were certain things I did with my mother's side. Depending upon who I was with.
Right.
But you become your own person, and then you combine the two, and that's who I think I am. I'm my
Mhm.
mother's son, but I'm also my father's son,
Right.
because there's a lot of traits I think I have of both of them. So good or bad.
It's how the cultures and the genes work.
That's right.
It all mixes together, which is the good thing.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like, you know, your family, you know, you're very close to your family, but it seems like you have a bigger extended family because, you know, just knowing you and knowing the community, it's I always hear the word family.
Right.
And what does that mean to you? I mean, I know you have your nuclear family,
Right.
but it's almost like your community is also your family.
Right. It is. And you know what it is, from my own point of view, there's my family,
Mhm.
which is the family I've created and the family I come from.
Mhm.
My mother's family and my father's family, which are, my mother come from, I think there was 9 kids, and my father was 7, I believe. So then they, you know, but still, you have a lot of cousins, second cousins. You know, it's just, you know, I guess it depends on where you are at that point. You know, you start here and then you work your way out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, depending upon what you're doing. I have a lot of cousins, especially on my mother's side, which I know more of. I grew up with them. They were like older brothers.
Mhm.
You know, I never had an older brother, so I did a lot of things with them. And there's a couple still alive today, which I still do things with once in a while. But you know, it's just, you know, not only being family, but our houses were close. So you know, we weren't much different than an average neighborhood, but we were a lot different than the average neighborhood. That's the best I could explain it.
Yeah. Well, how could you explain that more?
Yeah, I mean, because even though they're your neighbor, but they're also your relative. But then, you know that in your house, your mother and your father, they do their thing. This is theirs, also theirs. So it comes to a point in time where even though you're relatives, even though you're neighbors, but then you go back to your own family. You know, it's kind of hard to explain. I guess, how could I say? You know, we might fight amongst ourselves, but when we need one another, we're all there.
Right.
That's the way I would put it.
Yeah. That must be a good thing, good feeling.
Yeah,
to
it
have,
is. It is
I don't
because
think many people have that.
yeah, like I'll give you for instance. My wife still talks about it today. After I come home from the hospital from an accident, and they were having troubles getting me in the house because you know, they had to carry me. So my wife made a phone call. Well, here come trucks and guys, you know, motorcycles, you know, and there was just a bunch of guys there to help her get me in the house and get me set up. I mean, these guys just come from nowhere, you know. Within minutes, yard full of, you know, guys help. My cousins help me out, my uncles, you know. So it's nice, you know.
You must have felt a lot of love. At
Yeah,
that
yeah,
point.
it does. You know, it's nice knowing that when they're needed, they're there, you know.
Do you want to talk about your accident at all, or how it made you feel, or what you learned about it, about yourself maybe?
No, I just say yeah, it's kind of turned things around for me, but I've learned a lot. You know, I never want to experience anything like that again. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but I guess, well, we're always told that things happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was me and it's hard to say about it, but like I said, it all worked out in the end because now I'm here. I'm with my son. I can get him on the bus, get him off. My wife can go to work, and we don't have to worry about who's watching him and, you know, who's going to be home and things like that. So that's,
So it was like a cave-in, right?
yes.
And you know, you could have died,
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad, but
but you had help.
yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I had a phone call about a month ago. There was 2 brothers that they were Manny and Fernando, Portuguese guys, nice guys. They were co-workers, and the one just gave me a call about a month and a half ago and asked me how I was doing. You know, I thought it was very nice because these guys, when they helped me get out, they risked their own lives by helping me.
Right.
You know, there's certain parts early on I remember, and there's certain things I don't remember. My wife tells me, you know, because at some point I lost it. And I also have a friend, a Scottish friend, that we were good partners working together, and he stuck it with me, through it with me all the way. You know, I just remember saying, just go to the hospital with me. And he went to the hospital with me, and you know, he went as far as the doctors would allow him, and I still talk to him today.
Wow. And you couldn't walk, right?
No, I was bedridden for about 6-7 months.
And you couldn't garden.
I couldn't do anything. But I slowly but surely, you know, I'm back. I'm not 100%, but I never will be. But I deal with it.
But you do all the things that you
Yeah,
didn't
so
think maybe you couldn't do.
yeah, I do. I do everything that I like to do. You know, maybe at a different level or at a different pace, but I still get it done.
So that really must give you a feeling of how strong you really were,
Yeah, besides,
body and soul, right?
yeah, and I'm like my father. I'm independent.
Mhm.
You know, I don't really like to ask anybody for help unless they actually need it. But if there's a will, there's a way. We were always told, so
Right.
I try to do it like that now.
Um, do you have like any special expressions or sayings that you think are unique to, your community, your family, or that you can think of that maybe,
Yeah, there's like the one I just gave you. You know, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, and my mother had a few, but I wouldn't say them on camera. But I'll be honest with you. I mean, there was one in particular. You know, I mean, young and being married and having her family at an early age, and I was like everybody else. There were some tough times, and I went to her and her own way, in her own words. God rest her soul. She helped me out. She told me just in her way. I asked her, and this is what she said. Certain things to me, and I just to this day I still think about it.
You can still hear that.
Yeah, I still think about it, and I kind of laugh myself a little bit, but it helps me out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And just that simple little thing she said, that might be a little R-rated, but beside the point, it helped me out.
Say it.
No, it's just, it's just the way she was. You had to know her.
Translate it.
You had to know her. I mean, she was tough. She was tough, but she helped me out a lot. Just simple things.
Right. I guess it's that toughness that makes you strong. And
Yeah.
Right.
But you know what? It's I don't know. You live and you learn.
If you could say anything to, because I noticed in the beginning when I started talking to you, you used the word outsider.
Mm-hmm.
If you would want to say anything to someone maybe who wasn't a member of your community, and to sort of give them an education about your community and your family and your extended family, what would you want them to know?
That we're no different than anyone else. We have bathrooms, we have running water, we watch cable too. We're no different. I mean, I think, and Wayne will probably tell you the same thing. I think since this case came about,
and this is the Ford Superfund
case, and we've attended many, many meetings, and I think a lot of people didn't think that we would catch on that the way we've caught on. And we understand what they're saying. There's a lot of educated people out there that are, on both sides of this, and we talk to them, and they, on their own level, and we understand. So people might think, well, the guys don't go to school or nothing up there, nothing like that. It's not true, but we do understand. We know anything up there, we know how to survive, and that's something that's built in all of us.
Right.
We'll survive.
You've been there a long time.
Yes. Good times and bad, but we'll survive.
Yeah. Do you think that it would be a good idea for there to be maybe more programs in the schools to talk about the history of the mine area, Upper Ringwood, or just what it really it really made? I mean, that was the beginning of Ringwood.
Right. Well,
And
it's funny you should say
sort
that.
of ignored.
I've talked to Dr. Martin lately, and Wayne can attest to it, that they started a gardening program. I guess they have it at Peter Cooper and Robert Erskine. Well, I was contacted earlier this year by Dr. Martin, school superintendent, and he wanted to involve some of the Ramapos.
Mm-hmm.
And someone had told him about me, so he called me, and I said, yes, I'd be interested. And then I introduced Wayne to him. So, and he explained to me what they want to do. But basically what they're going to try to get something into the curriculum about the Ramapo Mountain people, which I thought was very nice. And starting with the gardening, and he's got great ideas, Dr. Martin, and he's willing to work with us. So we're going forward.
I think that's a wonderful step.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
to start
Absolutely.
there, and there's a lot of knowledge that you can give to people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And especially like even now with this case with Ford, I mean, we're the first time ever a Superfund site that's been listed was taken off the Superfund list and relisted. So there's a lot of education there,
That's right.
you know. So and just about the people alone and who we are. There's something there.
You talked about your father being in the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any other relatives that were involved in any, historical events like wars or even the civil rights movement or?
No, you know what? My father's younger brother, one of his younger brothers passed away. He was a Vietnam vet. My father was in Korea. His older brother was in Korea. And then my mother had a brother who was in Korea. And my mother's sister had her husband. There were a lot of them were all in Korea around the same time, back and forth.
Right, right.
And my wife's father, because he was in World War II. He had several Purple Hearts.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, he was wounded in action.
Do you have a lot of historical documents or photos or mementos or anything that in your family archives that you cherish?
As far as
Or anything, really, like historical or anything, as far as, maybe...
I mean, there's keepsakes from, like, my mother was given to her from her mother, or, after they passed on, his families split things up, and same thing happened. My mother passed away. She only had one daughter, but she gave me some things that belonged to my mother, a couple pieces of jewelry. She gave my wife something, my daughter something, I believe also my granddaughter. So, I mean, it's just the small things. Nothing other than what I was taught and what I remember. That's the biggest thing that they gave me to pass down.
That's the biggest gift.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of photographs of your families and the past, things that might have gone on in Upper Ringwood? Or?
I particularly don't. I mean, my mom, before she passed away, she gave me some of the photos when we were all kids. For some reason, she just gave them to my wife, so figuring that she would use them more. I'm not, that's about it.
I've seen pictures of your mother. She was a beautiful young woman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She was, what can I say? She was special to me, and I had a hard time. We all had a hard time when she passed away, but something you got to deal with. I guess we all have to, but it was really rough.
Yeah. It's hard times. How do you feel like the world is different, the world in general, and then maybe the community is different than it was when you were a child? Has it changed a lot over time?
Yeah. I'm not going to say changed a lot. Some things have changed and some things haven't. But, for instance, when I was a kid, if one person out of the 500, say, had a newer car. Now everybody's got a new car. And things like of that nature. It seems like everybody has more. There's better jobs out there, and we found them. When we were all kids, everybody worked for the state park or locally. But some of the, as we got older, some of the guys got out there and they found different jobs and traveled a little farther, made a little bit more money. So, other than that,
so it's just progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel as if, or do you know, the younger generation, are they going to stay in the community, or do you think they'll move out of the community or come back? Do you feel
that? I can't answer.
Yeah.
I know my daughter. She purchased a house over in Harrison Mountain Lakes.
She's still in Ringwood.
Yeah, she's still in Ringwood. But for everyone else, I'm kind of a homebody. I don't really leave the house much.
Right.
No more than I have to. I'll put it to you that way. So I kind of stay in my own little world, and I'm comfortable with that.
And your favorite hobby?
I have many, but right now my favorite hobby is gardening and being with my grandchildren.
Right.
My grandson.
Do you hunt?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I like to hunt, fish. I took my grandson a couple times hunting with me. He loves to fish. I took him all ice fishing last year. We all went out as a whole family. We did a little ice fishing. We didn't catch anything, but it wasn't about catching anything. Just about being out there with everybody.
Where did you go?
Actually, right on the lake by my daughter's house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you think that things have changed as far as people like in Upper Ringwood? It seemed as if there were different places a long time ago. They were named different things. It was
Yeah.
like different streets, different all things changed.
Yeah, well, they changed because we had simple names for everything. I mean,
What were they? What was it?
there was Pipeline.
And so where would that be?
Pipeline is actually just above where Wayne's sister lives now.
Mhm.
And also, I'm sorry, where Wayne lives now. That was
Okay.
considered Pipeline.
And that's up behind the playground and
On
up
the top
by
of
the water
hill.
tank.
Right, that's Pipeline. Then when you got down to the bottom from Wayne, from that, you had Cannon Mine.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go over where I live, it was Horseshoe Bend.
Right.
Then you go up to where the recycling is now. That was considered Peter's Mine, or up to the mine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, we just had common names, but everybody knew.
Right.
You know, if you said this one, we knew exactly where it was.
And then some of the names got changed down the road.
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah.
know how that happened,
And,
but
the community was never notified that they were going to change.
I can't say
Or
I can't say that because at the time when a lot of this was going on,
you were little.
I was working a lot, and
Mhm.
and I just, like I said, I did my thing home, and I really just, that's where I stayed. You know, I was
Mhm.
just too busy working. I really wasn't following things that much. You know, so I just.
So, in a way, do you think that this whole issue with the Superfund site, even though it's a very horrendous thing to think about, that, it still has to be cleaned up, but maybe it's brought the community a wider, sort of like, people understand more and maybe can know more about the community than they did. It's maybe more open.
I think, if anything, there's something that come out of this is that what our community has learned, that there's a lot of people, good people out there, willing to give their time and their resources to help us out.
Right.
That's something that we've learned from the very beginning. You know, so you can't judge a book by its cover. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That we've had a lot of help, and people still, like to participate. They stand behind us and with us. So, we've learned a lot.
So it's like in life, there's sometimes the good comes out of bad, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
a lot of things are bittersweet.
Yeah, I would say so.
When you think about your vision of the future of your community, your culture, what do you envision? What would your dream be?
I really don't think about it. If I would say anything, what I would like to see in the future was some of the younger generation, instead of being so careless and not caring, I would like to see that change. But that, I don't see that happening. It's a different time now.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, you learn to do things what you were told to do, and it was a different world back then, and you did them. It was that simple.
Mhm.
Because you had to make good use of what you had, the resources.
Mhm.
There was no waste. Now the kids, some of these younger kids, they don't care. So I don't. Like I said, again, I stick to my own little world,
Mhm.
which is my family, and that's what I do.
Right. You are on the community advisory group for the EPA.
Yes, I am.
Do you feel like that's something that's going to have a positive outcome?
Well, you know what? It's a forum to get, how can I say this, that we can communicate amongst all the groups.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of issues, up, down, left, right, good and bad, but it's a forum for us to discuss these things, and I believe that it's a good thing, that because there was never that communication. Now there's communication, and
Right.
I just don't, I don't recall my mother saying or anybody else saying, like, there was a lot of communication with everyone, but now through this here, the whole world knows we're out there, and that's fine.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's an outlet for us, so
It's just opened everything up.
yes, it has.
Yeah. So if you had one word to describe your community, your family, your extended family, what would it be?
I don't know.
That's tough, right?
Yeah, that's tough. I can't answer that. I really don't know.
Tight knit?
Yeah, I'd say so. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
That's
the hard one. I can't
yeah,
even
that
think of
would be hard.
Even tight knit, you know. It's even though we're extended family, we're this close, but we're also this far away at times. So you know, you can't really put a. I don't think there's a word.
There couldn't be one word.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't feel that.
No.
That's just my thought.
Yeah. Everybody's different, but I guess maybe the best way to explain it is what you said before, is that, you know, when someone needs someone,
We're all there.
you're there
Yeah.
for each other. All
Yeah,
pitching in.
yeah. We're all different, but we're all the same.
Yeah.
That about says it.
Is there anything else you'd want to say, Jay, about, you know, just you know, your family, your community, the Ramapos, that you'd want to talk about that maybe I didn't ask you?
No, I think you about covered it. I mean, like I said, through this interview, and you know me, my world is my family, and that's where, you know, that's just me. You know, my father was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I said, there's family, then there's family.
Right.
You know, and that was his world, and everybody knows him. And I'm the same way. You know, I'd rather be home with my family. And else, like right now, they're cooking outside. I could be in the house watching television. It's not the point of me being outside participating, but just knowing that they're there and everybody's happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you come to our house, everybody knows the routine, and that's fine by me. The kids are outside running around. Actually, my grandson he needed a couple shovels, and I don't know what he's doing, but you know, looking for frogs in the wood pile. That's fine by me. You know, as long as everybody's okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy.
Do you feel connected to the word Ramapo?
To a point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hate to say this, but
When you think of your heritage, what do you think of?
I think of my grandparents, both
Right.
sides,
Right.
and my great grandparents, the ones
Right.
I remember.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this thing that started and that's going on now, I don't know, maybe it's my age or my generation, I want to say, but I still remember my grandparents and my great grandparents, some of the things that they said back at the time, but they didn't, you know, just jam all this stuff in our head. You know, there were certain things were said, and just the way we were raised. And Wayne will tell you the same thing. There's a lot of things that they do today. I don't recall my grandparents doing it. Maybe it's just me.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I just try to remember what I know when I, you know,
Right.
when I was a kid, and I just hold that right here. That's
Right.
all.
And it
That's
was
good
just
enough for
sort
me.
of like something that you just took in.
Yeah,
was
exactly.
just,
There was no title.
Right.
You know, you did what you did, and you heard what you heard. You know, and certain things, heard different things. Certain families said different things to their families,
Mhm.
or you know, their inner family, like, you know, and then my family would say something maybe a little different.
Mhm.
But you know, it would all come together
Right.
in the end. But still, there was certain values in each family
Mm-hmm.
also. So, and that's like I said, that's what.
So there was a big culture, but each family also
Was-
had their own traditions,
Yes.
which came
Yes.
together and which sort of came
Right.
into your heart.
Right, and some of the things were the same, but then, you know, people, even though we're all the same, but like I said, we're all different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody's has their own little way of doing things. The end results might be the same, but the process of getting there might be a little bit different.
Right.
But still, you know, that's the way we grew up. So, and I try to live that same way today. Just simple. It's a simple way of living, but you know what? Like I said, we survive. You know, we don't need nothing extravagant. Just the basics. That's all you need.
And your family.
That's me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much.
Wayne Mann. I live at 2A Van Dunk Lane in Upper Ringwood.
How old are you?
I'll be 50 this year.
Big birthday.
I'd say so.
Yeah. Were you named after anyone that you know of?
No, not that I
No?
know of. Because there's like, I have a cousin Wayne who has a son Wayne.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And what is your nickname?
Quick.
And why do they call you Quick? Do you know?
I don't know. It's like everybody up there has a nickname. You're born to give you one. Somebody just gives you one. So everyone has one.
So when you were little, you were called Quick?
Uh-huh. And like I said, everybody, I don't know what it is, but it seems like every kid could be a month old and somebody just gives them a name and it sticks with them forever.
Did you do that with your children?
Yes.
They all have nicknames?
Yes.
Well, since we're talking about that now, why don't I ask you, when did you meet Barbara?
Probably around 1979.
And when did you get married?
August 13th, 1988.
Wow. So you've been together a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah. How many children do you have?
3.
3. And what are their names?
Candace is the oldest, and I have 2 sons, Chris and Mike.
And what are their nicknames?
Chris is Roop, Mike is Skeet, and Candace is Pip.
And do you know why? Did you
No.
give them those names?
No, it was just like anybody just picks them. And once somebody gives them a name, you keep it.
And how many grandchildren do you have?
I have 4.
And what are their names?
I have Mia, Tia, Tamara,
Right.
and 1 grandson, Anthony.
And do they have nicknames too?
Tamara we call the Queen, and Tia and me is 2 princesses, and Anthony is the devil.
What was your mother's name?
Margot Vivian Mann.
And your father?
I never knew my dad.
You never
My
knew your
grandparents raised me.
And who are your grandparents?
Evelyn Mann and Ira Mann.
And you were very close to your grandmother?
Very close. And to my grandpa.
And your grandpa.
So actually it's like I had my mom and my grandmother was my mother.
So
And
you
my
had-
grandfather was my dad.
And how old were they when they passed on?
Oh, wow, I don't know, because a lot of things I just try to put out of my mind.
Right.
So,
But they were your main, that was your main
oh, they were my
family.
everything.
They were your
I love my mom, but
Of course.
there's nothing I love more than
Yeah.
my grandparents.
How many siblings do you have?
Well, again, you're going to ask me that question. I'm going to give you an answer, and I'll probably have to try to explain it. Actually, I have 2 brothers,
Mm-hmm.
but my grandparents raised me, so we don't consider each other as me as their nephew and them as my aunts and uncles. We're sisters and brothers. So if you ask me how many siblings, I would say 15.
15.
So that's, a lot of people get confused,
Right.
but if you was to ask my aunts, say, is that your nephew, you would offend them,
Right.
or my uncles.
Because they're your brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Right. So your tight-knit family, your nuclear family, and then you have your big family. Because, I mean, you and I know each other, and I know by speaking to you so many times, you always talk about your family. And I think of that as like your whole community.
That's how we are. And again, it's like, I'll call people like that might be my cousins,
Mhm.
well, I might call them aunt or uncle.
Mhm.
And that's how our community is. Like, whether they're your aunt or uncle or not, that's how we grow to respect them, that you call the elders aunt and uncle. That's just the way it's always been.
And it's like a very, well, I always hear you also talking about the elders and your respect for the elders.
Oh, that was something, even when we was as young children, you learned very well to respect the elders. And the elders might not have been just your family in the community, it was any elder,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but more so the way we grew, like I said, we was more so to ourselves, and respect was major. And
Did you learn a lot of different types of stories or folklore from your family?
well, growing up as a kid, I sort of didn't pay much attention, you know, like, because some of the sayings that the old timers, I'll call them, that we would laugh because, you know, like they would say one of their sayings like dead as a doornail, you know, and so they had sayings that, you know, like as a child, or I'll say a young man, I sort of didn't think meant really much, but then you grow and then you start thinking of what they were really saying, and then you're like, wow, this had meaning.
It's like it comes back to you.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Well, sure. Well, you know, when you grow up, I mean, you know, as being young, you think a lot of things are sort of funny, but the things that they were teaching us had meaning, and didn't realize it until, you know, you grew up.
Right. Do you feel as if you're passing on these same stories and part of your culture to the younger generation in your community?
Well, I'd say they were more than stories. They had meaning.
Meaning, like, yeah, go ahead. What
Like,
would you call
because
it?
you know, like, to me, a story is, if I was to go over here and get a book and read it, but most of what people would call stories, they were telling us probably of their lifestyle as growing up. And so basically we weren't being told as a figure of speech a story. We were being told of their history as a child, or, you know, so basically they were just passing down probably from their parents, I guess.
So it was like the oral tradition.
Yes, it was truth.
It was the truth, what
some
was
might
really
not have
happening.
been, but more so, I think we were being taught facts.
And from their experience.
Yes.
And so do you feel like this is being passed on now to the younger generation?
I would say yes, but maybe not from everyone. Maybe not everyone in the community, because as Jay said, you know, time has changed, and so is sort of the younger generation. But like Jay, he's still teaching his kids the old way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing the same thing, and maybe a few others.
Mm-hmm.
But it's different times now. You know,
When
but,
you say the old way, what do you mean by that?
you know, the hunting, the fishing, you know, the picking of the berries, and you know, the old way. You know, and that is the old way. And like, you know, I even learned some of the stuff I learned is from Jay. You know, like, I sort of didn't pay much attention growing up, being young and not paying attention. I did the some, but not as much as I should have. So I learned a lot from Jay and from Viv and from others.
And you're also a gardener.
Yes.
You have a huge garden, I think.
Oh, I do, and thanks to Jay.
Thanks to Jay.
Because I didn't really plant edible stuff. I just planted anything.
Really?
Yeah.
And now you have a combination?
Of a little bit of everything. And some of the stuff that I have now comes from Jay. Like, you know, berry bushes, he would give me a couple here and there, and I would plant them, and horseradish he's given me, I plant. So, like, he gives me stuff and said, okay, put it in the ground, and that's...
I remember you
do.
telling me once about green tomatoes.
Yes, I always loved fried green tomatoes. I remember eating them as a kid.
And didn't you, wasn't it your grandmother or was it your mother who loved them so much?
Everybody loved them, but my mom seemed to love them a lot, probably more than me, and I love them.
And when you see the green tomatoes, you think of her, I guess, sometimes.
No, actually, I think of her, but I think of my grandmother, my grandfather, and like my brothers and my sisters. Again, you probably some people get confused, because when I say my brothers and sisters, that's what I mean. That's how we feel.
Right.
And it's like, it was a treat to have a green tomato, because as Jay always says, he don't grow green tomatoes. So for my grandfather to sort of bring in some green ones, it was special.
So that means you just pick them early, right?
Yes.
And you fry them.
Yes, and my mom...
Do you batter them?
Yes.
Do you fry them with anything else, or is it just like you slice them, batter them, and fry them?
Well, you can make different types of batters.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know, like I said, everybody probably had a different one they made.
And what's your recipe?
I have nothing fancy, just egg and flour.
And in butter?
No, actually I use olive oil.
Olive oil. Sounds good. Talk a little bit, if you could, about your childhood and what it was like growing up in such a beautiful environment.
The only thing I could really tell you about my childhood is that I was never happy when I get on the school bus to leave up at Ringwood. You know, because basically most of the time you were ridiculed by either kids or teachers. You know, not all, because there was some very beautiful teachers and there was a lot of good kids. But it was more so, I found myself constantly stressed, because you know, when I left home, it was like I was afraid to be gobbled up by the world, because the world was cruel. You know, so I did what they said. I daydreamed a lot
Hmm.
because I couldn't function.
When you were in school?
Yes, because I was always by the window looking like
go
towards the
home.
road. I wanted to be home, and I didn't feel comfortable in school.
So your experience in school was
Bad,
bad.
very bad.
And do you feel as if someone, was there anyone at school who tried to reach out to you at all?
Yes, there was some good teachers, and one of the main ones I remember is Mr. Thulin.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a few others, but he was like, I don't know, he's one of the greatest teachers or whatever I've ever known, because he treated us as an equal
Mm-hmm.
to anyone and everyone. So he didn't he was just like great. And then there was a substitute, old Miss Brown. She always would bring in candy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, you were going to do good. You were a kid, and she would sort of give you a treat. But most of the, what I found about myself was, like I used to do like a lot of kids' homework for them for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And like when it come time to getting the papers graded or whatever, it seemed that I always got like an E or a D, and the kids that I was doing the homework was getting like A's and B's, and I didn't dare to tell that I was doing hers, but I never let I didn't let it bother me that like until like actually probably had to got out of school. Like I probably should have said something, but then I was afraid to get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But so they were grading mine and giving me poor grades, and all at the same time I was doing other kids' homework and they were getting A's and B's, so I didn't dare to say anything.
It must have made you feel bad, though.
No, actually,
Frustrated?
I always felt bad, and like I said again, when I sort of left the community, I always felt like a bad, but more so afraid,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't a day that went by that someone didn't say something sarcastic.
Like, what kind of things would they say to you?
Always about like the color of the people in Upper Ringwood, and like the people up there was always dirty, and and they didn't hide, like they would say it
Mm-hmm.
where you could hear it. So it's like you always felt out of place. But if you said something to a teacher, you sort of got in trouble.
How did you cope with that?
I don't know. Mentally, it hurt, but I would go home and tell my grandmother, and like she would always like say, don't fight anybody, and she always said, do good for evil, and I never understood it, and then my grandpa, he said I wasn't allowed to fight, so it was like, so I just sort of like, I don't know, I went somewhere, some other world, because when I went to school, I sort of didn't really hear much.
So you were actually in a way daydreaming. You took yourself away from the situation.
Well, that's how I got away from the reality of
Right.
it. So I sort of went into my own world.
Yeah. What happened when you went to high school?
Actually, I never get a chance to get in Lakeland. I went for, I don't know, what do you call it, orientation or whatever, when you first start. And I was asked I was told by the principal that they didn't want me there because of my reputation.
What kind of reputation could you have had?
Well, that's what I said. I said, I've never been in trouble. So I said, so you don't want me here? And he's like, no. So I called my grandmother. And I wasn't even 16. So actually, I don't know how they could have put me out. But so my grandmother come down and she said, you don't want my grandson here? And they're like, no, not really. And so they let her sign me out.
What did you do then?
Nothing. I would work.
Mhm.
Like, here and there, because I was still like 16, so
Right.
you couldn't work a regular job. So, I sort of like help my grandfather, or help my
Mhm.
grandmother, or
Mhm.
help people in the community. And
Mhm. Did you feel, were you happy then at that point? That
yes,
you
I felt safe.
You felt safe then?
hmm
Mm-hmm.
That no one could hurt me.
Right. When did you begin to work at the state park?
Actually, I went there in 1975.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And when did you leave school? Do you remember what year that was?
Wow.
Oh, it's hard to remember the years.
Yeah.
But was it a number of years after you left school that you started working at the park?
Yeah, actually, I worked at the park for like 10 seasons before I became permanent.
Oh.
But prior to 75, part of my summer, because I was too young to work, so my grandmother was a tour guide
Mm-hmm.
in the manor. So,
At the manor.
so half, basically not half, but maybe almost half of my summer was going with her and volunteering, picking plants. I probably picked more flowers than I did plants, and running around, and it was like I felt comfortable, and that's
That
basically.
sounded like it was, was really a nice situation to be with your grandmother at the park.
Oh, it was. It was like I wasn't
Yeah.
the only kid, because some of our aunts worked there at the same time, and some of their grandchildren would be there also, or whatever. So, and then the older ones would be there playing anyway. So it was like second home, I guess.
Right. So how long have you been working at the park now?
Well, if you count seasons, 34 years,
34 years.
but going on 25 permanent.
Right. Do you like that job?
I love it. I love it. I mean, my grandmother did it. My great grandfather, and a lot of my cousins, and some of my uncles and aunts, and it's been a family thing with our family
Right.
prior to them even getting the property, as for the park.
Really? Worked over there for maybe the Ewitts too?
Yes.
Right. Did any member of your family work in the iron mines?
My great grandfather. He was a couple of generations after, actually, Ed Morgan.
Okay.
He was I think I'm pretty sure he was one of like his apprentices after a couple of generations later.
Do you have any tools or anything from your grandfather?
I have actually 2 pair of pliers that he made in 1920,
Really?
and they're in great shape.
Prized possession, I bet.
Yeah, they're in great shape, and they're still wrapped in wax paper.
Really?
That's what he in an old box, and it's on there. Like the writing is starting to fade, but it says on there, made in 1920, and I have them. Actually, in 1964, 65, the Golden Jubilee, he displayed them.
Really?
And I have a news article with him.
So all of the history that there is up in Ringwood or the mine area, Upper Ringwood, I know you know a lot about it. Could you talk a little bit about what you've learned through the years about, the historical part of Upper Ringwood and what it really has given to the United States even?
I'll tell you, I'll sum it up for you with not too many words. What I've learned, we should never have been made to feel unproud. We should never have been made to feel like we were never part of Ringwood, because we are Ringwood. And through 7 or 8 years of studying and reading just about everything I can get my hands on, and what saddens me is like, and again, I heard you ask Jay about like when we become Upper Ring. I think it was like in 1975, and I guess the council changed the name. And I mean, it's no secret that everyone was ashamed of us, and not only did they shun us, I guess, and I don't know how this is going to sound, but it's the way I feel. The fear was that someday we would learn of our history, because I paid no attention to history, because basically through the school system and everything, you're always made to feel that you were never nothing or a part of Ringwood, or you never did nothing for Ringwood as in our community. So I grew to think like, okay, I don't care then, I don't want to know anything. And then when I got involved, and I asked Jay to promise me that he wouldn't leave the association, is why I stayed.
And this is the
RNAA,
and that stands for the
Ringwood Neighborhood Action Association.
And when did you get involved with that?
I think it was 2003.
And you eventually became the president,
actually,
right?
it was before 2003, because my mom was coming to the meetings, and she was a great supporter of mine. And that's actually when I started to really study, and I needed to know more than the dumping.
Right.
I needed to know who we were. If it was true of how we were being told, we never did nothing for Ringwood, we never did nothing for the country. So it was a multitasking that I had to do, because I needed to know, did we deserve to be dumped on? Were we really nothing? Was it truth of what everybody said? So I needed to know more than about the dumping. I needed to know the history. And so it's been 7 stressful or 8 stressful years.
So when you really got involved in the history of your community, your mother was still alive?
Yes.
So that must really make you feel good to know that she knew that you were...
Well, I I never really explained much to her because my mom was old-fashioned, and I wanted to leave her just alone and do what I had to do, like for the community, but more so I needed to know for myself is, and the more I learned about the history of Upper Ringwood, the more stressed I became. So knowledge has a price that you pay, because it's like the world turned its back on us, America turned its back on us, but when it was supplying America for every major war,
The iron.
then it was protected by the government. It meant something, you know, and then when there was no more use, it was like, not only did they turn their back on Upper Ringwood, they turned their back on its children, who were part of the reason that America is what it is today. You know, so I find it frustrating to know that how important of a role that our family played.
And that's the big family.
Yeah, not only in Ringwood, but in America. You know, and to find that, I would say that we were betrayed, because with all the good that it's done, and our family was part of the mining before the mining,
Right.
but they were never remembered, and it's like, even, you know, like you'll hear about the Hewitts and the Ryersons, the Erskines, the Coopers, and this one and that one, and I've got once to ever hear something anywhere about what our family did for America. You know, yeah, you don't hear that, and I find it frustrating.
Yeah, I remember you and I had talked about some of the pictures that you would see, and there would be members of your family, and there would be no name in the old, like even the Lou West book, or,
Right.
you know, and it's like,
Every picture has a name, and that sort of, it bothers me somewhat, but you know, you go back in the '60s, and you know, you had basically like the civil rights movement, you had everything going on. There was nothing.
Was it going on up here at all?
Well, you know, for us, and Jay sort of is like, I don't know, my educator, and it's like, you know, you make a movie and it's horrible, like Love Canal or whatever, and I never really ever thought that we were living this way. We were sick, people was dying, and it's like, it would be unfair to say that no one cared, because people did care, and Jay always said that there was people out there to be willing to help us if we were willing to help ourselves. So that gave me drive.
And was there a defining moment when you said to yourself, I'm going to get involved now? Was there something that caused you to, I mean, those 7 or 8 years ago, when you finally said to yourself, I want to learn what my history of my people are, and you know, why this could have happened to us? Or was it just something that evolved?
No, you could say part of evolving, but I became more and more involved when I started learning from lawyers and from government, from great people like yourself, from sitting down with Jay and us knocking heads and trying to figure out, Jay, help me here, which direction am I going? You know, and Vivian, and so I've had to learn from not an individual, but just about every entity out there. So I find that I've had probably 7 years of many sleepless nights because I needed to learn, and I couldn't learn sleeping. So I would sit up all night long and read and reread and reread. And one of my strong things I tell people is, if you say things in a meeting or wherever, I'll go home and I'll sit and I'll think of everything that everybody said, and I'll put everything together. So 10 years from now, I'll tell you something that you said, and you'll say, well, how do you know that? I don't even know either, but it's just something inside my brain that just makes me absorb. And
Right, and you absorb it, and you can process it,
yes,
and you can remember it.
I couldn't tell you what I
which is
ate yesterday.
amazing.
but I could probably tell you what happened 500 years ago. So there's just something that, we've been through.
The community.
Yeah, the community as a whole. I mean, I can't even explain to you what we've been through, because no community should ever go through what we went through, and what I assumed and thought was normal my whole life, that I realized it was never normal, like with sickness and death, and it just became something like if someone died. I mean, it was like you were volunteering, but it was the right thing. And now I learned, probably over the last 7 years, it wasn't the right thing. It wasn't real. It was a little bit of, I have to, and what's stressful for me, I have to learn from many, and at the same time, in a meeting, I'm trying to define everything that's going on around me, and my brain won't shut down until I come up with an answer to myself. Otherwise, I can't sleep. I'll sit up all night long.
Do you feel like you've found most of the answers at this point? That, I mean, of course we never do, but it's always an ongoing, but yeah, how do you, where are you at this point? In feelings about the community, where you are, what has happened?
The truth will never be told. We know the truth in our heart. Every agency that played a role knows the truth, Ford knows the truth. But Jay, again, you'll hear me probably say Jay a million times. Like you said, there's real truth, there's political truth. Which one's going to be told? It'll never be real truth, because real truth would tell hey, the deaths occurred. It's probably something to do, I won't say just Ford or whatever, but I've been educated very well, and I've made myself become very well educated again in many subjects. Not one. I couldn't function on one, which I would love to have been able to say stick to science. I couldn't. I had to know a little bit of everything, because it's important, because I've learned that anyone can tell you anything, but what's the real truth?
If you don't know it yourself.
Exactly. If you're in denial, then you can never tell me the truth. And this is what I've learned along the way, that like my big thing is what is my true cause? What is my destiny? Why did my grandmother say I was special?
Right.
I was different. I know now, because I'm out to help everyone, not just the community. I've been able to go to water quality meetings and speak in front of mayors and commissioners and everything from like 20 states.
So when you think back how they wouldn't even let you in high school, and look where you've come,
and
do you feel a sense of frustration or anger
No,
at all?
I feel
or
proud.
Vindicated?
No, I feel
Yeah,
proud because for once in our life, someone listened. At a cost of life, but someone still listened. And no matter how stressful I find it to be or frustrating, is like we've come a ways, and we have a long way to go. But I always say, at what price and who paid the price is what I find painful.
Right. Do you feel optimistic? I know that it's very painful to think about the people that have been hurt.
That's my strength. I've never seek revenge, just justice. And I don't know what justice is, because I don't see it for us.
You know.
I don't.
Do you feel that the children of Ringwood in your community are dealing with the same type of issues that you maybe used to deal with when you got on the school bus?
No, I don't think so. I honestly, I couldn't say yes or no, because I really don't know. But I think time has changed from our time. And it's like, again, I don't really hear like a lot of the young kids saying that, like there's a lot of negative stuff. So I really couldn't say if it is or it isn't, but I think time has changed. And again, as Jay said, I think Dr. Martin opened or allowed us to open a door, that it's up to us to sort of walk in and put a door stop and say, okay, well, we have to keep it open. I would never, I foresee it, and I still find it a little hard to believe that it's real, even though it's real. He's sincere, and we've met great people through him, and I think it's a step in the right direction, but it's going to be up to us to participate, and it's going to be up to us as community family members, I should say, is to try to get, like, not only more parents involved, but I think it's an opportunity for the kids to learn who they are, but I think it's more important that kids that are not from there learn real truth and not just negative sides. There's good and bad sides to it all, but I think, like today, like our children, more of them are getting into more sports in the schools, little guys and little girls, but I think part of the curriculum, as Jay said, is educating the children through the school system, because at home with mom and dad or grandma, grandpa, and young kids, they sort of they're like sponges to either positive or negative. And school, I feel the schools now would be more on a positive type of track, because given that this is not hidden anymore, we are not the savages that we were portrayed to be.
Right. We talked with Jay, the fact that something that was so terrible like Ford has sort of opened up the community, and people have realized, exactly, about, all about your people, and, just about the community, and about, the great stuff that's up there.
Right. Well,
and the family values, and
again, it was long overdue, but
right.
But at what price?
I know.
And who paid the price is what always sticks in my mind. It's like, again, the role that area played was forgotten. The people who helped play the role were most left. Those who stayed were forgotten. So history was forgotten.
But there is a way now, like you said, you're taking the first step, opening up the door and educating people from in and out of the community about the history of the community.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think it's very important. And we still got a little work to do on the government, but we've opened dialogue, we have made progress, we have moved forward. But it still has to be. It's probably going to be many years. But at least a dialogue is open, and it's and it's funny because I always think about what Jay says, and I find myself, I could sit with anybody with, I don't care what type of degree they got. I don't care if you could throw a fake one at me, and I'll come back at you with something. So it just amazes me how intelligent that we really are. Not that I've ever thought that we weren't, but it's just that we never got a chance to participate and prove.
Yeah, like when you see that you hold your own with the Ford executives and the scientists and EPA, and nobody can pull the wool over your eyes. It's a feeling of strength and power, and also
it's a pride.
Feeling pride.
It's a pride,
yeah.
Because, again, it's something I never had. Yeah. I accepted what the other side said. I accepted what they thought. I said, okay, well, if that's the way, then I'll stay to myself. Just think I'm a dummy, well, I'll be one.
And I think the fact that the younger generation has seen this progress that you've opened the doors to is just positive for them.
Yeah, and I think it's important. More important for us. It's more important for the younger children.
Yeah.
Because some of them, I pray that it'll grow up to be doctors or lawyers or nurses or a baseball star or football, because the potential's there.
And your daughter's a nurse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm very proud of her. But like I said again, we have to work on the younger kids, we have to not only let the schools educate them, we have to educate the schools.
Do you feel like you have support in the community to get in there and with the parents of the children to, make this transformation now?
Well, it's going to be a little tough because now again you have to remember you're talking about a community that was battered and beat, promised, broken promises for decades.
I mean, it must be hard to go back to a place where you have felt so, I guess, hurt, really.
Well,
Not only for you, but for, maybe the parents of the children didn't have a good experience, and maybe some of them did, but I guess, like you said, it's going to take time, but it
it's gonna
definitely
take
can
time.
happen.
Yeah, it can happen, but it's going to take time. I mean, it's just, you're not talking about a community that was beat down 5 years ago. You're talking about 50 years of beating. You know what I mean? So how do you, like it could be 10 years before that it really starts to move forward, because they're used to being tortured, and that's all it was. It was torture what they had to take. There's no other word for it. So
And
it's not easy.
The torture, I think, was it coming from,
It was coming from the other side, from every angle. That's just the way it was, and I mean, it's like, so opportunities are here, doors are opening, but you have to remember what little elders are left and what they remember. What me and Jay remember is one thing.
Right.
What the 170, what's left 70, 80 years, I can't even imagine what they remember. And unfortunately, it's gonna take time, hard work.
How do the elders feel about? Are they positive? Do they feel like, oh, it could never happen, or do you think they feel a sense of optimism too, that there has been progress?
Again, if you take the beating that they took for as long as they've taken it, I don't know if they could ever be optimistic about anything going positive without paying for it one way or another. For me, I'm going to be 50, and I've taken my share of the punishment, and mentally it scarred me for life. People might not think so, but it has. It made me angry most of the time, which I am. Never hateful, but angry sometimes, because I know now that we didn't deserve it. I always thought that we did.
That must have been a strange feeling to think that, you deserved it.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that's
Yeah.
the way it was. That's the
how
way it was.
prejudice
I
is.
mean, you get beat just so many times, you just start going and saying, hey, whip me. I'm not going to cry, but you can whip me. And that's just how I felt, like, hey, like I said, I've tried to hate. I have tried. Rightfully. But I can't.
Because that would eat you up, so.
It was everything against what my grandmother stood for.
Right.
So I could never.
And what was her saying again? Do good
Do
with
good
it
for evil.
For evil.
And my grandpa always said, you make your bed, you lie in it. And like I said, I never really took it serious what they were saying. And then I grew to find out how truthful and how right they were. But like I said, if you ask me, I just want to hate the world.
But
But I
you won't.
can't. I won't. I never will. It was against everything my grandmother stood for. So I sort of.
Well, you took action.
Well, I didn't. We did.
We
did.
Yes.
We did, because
Mhm.
I can't stress it enough. If I asked Jay to promise me that he would stay, and he stayed with me, or otherwise I wouldn't know as much as I would today. Because, like I said, I let my own fears always get there.
But with, Jay at your side, you've been a very strong spokesperson.
Well, Jay, Viv, Sue, Raj. I mean, my strength comes from them. I told you, I'd rather not sit here mic'd up. I'd rather be home or down by Jay's mom's or down at my grandmother's and just be left alone.
But don't you think it's good to talk about the feelings you have and the feelings that you might have had growing up, and also just getting the truth out there. I mean, you're laying it all on the line here.
That's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I am. But I mean, again, like we've come a ways, and it's like,
Yes.
you know, we got a ways to go. But me, I'm very bitter on the inside, and of course I don't show it. And again, like I said, I'll never hate anyone, not Ford, not anyone.
What do you do with that feeling?
Actually, I try to channel it for learning, getting knowledge.
Mhm.
So I use my pain, my fear, my anger, and I sort of try to turn it into good. And I do that through becoming educated.
Has your nucleus family, you know, Barbara and the children and your grandchildren, been very supportive of you?
Barbara's more afraid than anything else, because
Worried
actually,
about you?
well, actually, I think 3 years after I got involved, I come home one day from work, and I had a letter on my porch saying, you know, I should back off. And then the second one was like, you know, when enough's enough, I think you should stop. And I burned them. And then I called a few people, and they're like, I took it as a joke, so I burned them,
Oh boy.
which I probably shouldn't have. But one of the things I find that's funny about myself is I like, and I've always liked more so to help people with less, or versus trying to help myself more, because older guys like Jay, my brother Charlie, Mike, and all them, when I was a little guy, of course, I couldn't go with them all the time when they went. But when we needed them, they were there for us. More so, I throw rocks at them because they wanted to go too. And when they went to pick apples and everything, and I couldn't go because my grandpa would have with my brother. So, but I couldn't go. But so I find that people, I won't say weak, but are less fortunate. I sort of try to like be there for them even when they don't know.
Right.
You know, even if I'm wrong, but that's who I am, and I would rather lose a race and let you win to watch you be happy than for me to win. But this is the most important thing in my life because I promised my mom.
That's what you promised her
Yep,
before she passed on?
yep, that I would never give up, and I would see that whoever was guilty would pay for their crime. But unfortunately, given the real world, I can't truly make them pay.
But you have gotten the truth out there. You have. Maybe, you know.
What
I
I
mean,
need
you've
more than
done a lot
anything is
there.
for them to say they're sorry.
Do you think
I
that'll
need
happen?
No. Little things mean a lot, just to say to the community, we know what they did. They know what they did. I don't care about their money. I just want them to say they're sorry. But they're not going to. Because we live in a society to where if you say you're sorry, you're admitting guilt. Where did that ever come from? I can apologize to you for tripping over your foot. Doesn't mean I'm guilty that I tried to do it. You know, so we live in a society where the law and big industry and all this, to apologize, they feel weak.
So now that you feel, or that you know that you'll never get that apology, how are you going to channel how that frustration inside of you into something else positive? What do you think you're going to do?
I'm going to work harder. I'm going to keep asking. I'll keep asking. I'll keep asking until I die. Just say I'm sorry. Just it's very easy to. Again, it's no secret of the toxins that are there. It's no secret who brought what, this and that. Why is it so hard just to say I'm sorry? I've apologized to people that I didn't even do anything to.
How do you feel about the people or the agencies or the governments that didn't protect you and your family?
I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for them. You know, because there's no excuse for their failure. And, you know, I find that a lot of them will say, well, you know, I was a kid then, or I didn't chair the seat then. But unfortunately, a thing about government, you inherit the chair, you inherit the past. So what I find, and with an exception of Bradley Campbell and Lisa Jackson, because Bradley Campbell actually, more than dialogue, he opened up a friendship.
And he did say there were mistakes made.
Yeah, well, he was sincere and honest enough to he called it as a commissioner, but he saw it as a man.
Right.
You know what I mean? He took an oath, and he apologized for someone else's mistakes.
And I think it's important to note that at this point, even now, he's representing Roger DeGroat with his sinkhole pro bono.
Yeah, I think. Well, I always, I think he's a great man, and I told him that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I know he feels the same about you.
And I feel the same way about Lisa Jackson, and like Lautenberg and Menendez have been there. Others have been there.
Yeah.
There was just something about Bradley Campbell that, he pulled no punches.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he didn't make friends in the political world either by saying some of the things that he said, but I find that it takes a man more than just someone protecting their little seat in the government. Because again, it's like, we've been told by so many people that to read about it is one thing, to hear about it is one thing, to see it is another. What they see today is a million times better than what we remember yesterday. And that's what I find frustrating with the agencies, with the health and all that. Like basically everyone's in an agreement that failed. Every part of government that failed says, okay, let's not worry about the past.
Mm-hmm.
Why? When the damage was done.
Yeah,
and
don't worry about the past, let's move forward, but the past is still there.
Yeah, and then you look at it from a political side and a governmental side. This is the government game that's been played forever, but it's like, we know there is more than a want for industry, there's a need. We know that, we understand that. But how much of the need, how much betrayal to the minorities, how many more people has to die, or how many other poor towns, because we had 20,000 sites in New Jersey, before the government wakes up and decides, you know what, maybe there is not a need for this corrupt industry, for that one.
Is it true that I thought I heard when we first started this conversation, not this conversation, but when we had that initial meeting, it must have been about 4 years ago, at Borough Hall with the EPA and Ford and the community, your lawyers, lawyers for Ford were there, myself as an elected official was there. There was someone from I think it was the EPA, who said that it was the only Superfund site where people actually lived during the dumping.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes. And ATSDR basically thought that we didn't live on the dump site. They thought we lived somewhere around it.
Mm-hmm. But they never came to see
They never
it.
came. They never came.
Mm-hmm.
But, all in all, I won, in a sense, when they first started taking it out to where we felt it could be a little safer for the kids. I never went in it for the money.
I know.
The money couldn't bring one person back that's died. Not one. Money can't take the sickness from them that are sick, no matter what doctor they get. So, for me personally, I want an apology. I want Ford to say they're sorry. I don't care about their money. But what I do care about is saying you're sorry when you poison the community. That I do care about.
Do you think, as a member of the community advisory group for the EPA, that that committee, that group that you were on with Jay and I'm there with you, will be able to get Ford to move out that, finally clean up the site?
Even with our CAG, even with the senators and what is really clean when just a guess that Peter's mine alone, Cannon mine alone. We'll forget O'Connor. O'Connor can be cleaned at a price of probably $50 million, maybe a little more. Do I, in my lifetime, think that I'll see Peter's mine clean or Cannon mine? No. No.
You think you'll see O'Connor cleaned?
I can't even say a yes on that because, again, it's like Ford's looking well, which is understandable. If you look at industry, you look at business, and like trying to get around. They look for the cheapest way to do things. Let's face it. While it's probably going to be a battle to get O'Connor cleaned, I think it might be stressful, and we might be able to get him to do it. Might not. Who knows? O'Connor can be done. My concern more than O'Connor is Cannon mine and Peter's mine. All right, where's it going? Where's it going? We know they done to us. There's no denying, there's no mistaking it. But what have they done to everybody on the outside? Maybe where it comes up in somebody's spring somewhere, or out in the middle of the Wanacue Reservoir with a fractured bedrock. Nobody seems to know, but it's always that everyone seems to want to go away from that.
Right.
No one wants to touch it. Basically, nothing for nothing. You gotta take your hat off to the Water Commission because they hold strong. It's clean. It's good. And we did this. We did that. Well, Arcata study reports from the '90s. Hello. It was the '60s and the '70s.
In Ringwood with the fractured bedrock, unless you do some kind of an intense, survey or investigation of the bedrock and the water flow, you're not going to know anything.
No, but we have to keep fighting it because people from the other side have supported us. They've stood by us, and we've come a long way. Well, just to ease my own mind, I have to know in return for the good that many have done for us in helping us do, to make sure that in return I try to give them the best I can and make sure that they're not getting some of the same dose that we got all them years.
Right.
That's about all I can give them, is try to keep fighting to make sure that it's,
So the CAG really, at this point, is the best place to make that happen because it's really the only venue you have now.
Yes, and once the case is over, and we still got a battle ahead of us. When the lawyers shake our hands the last time and we say good luck to you and thank you, and they're gone. Unfortunately, we're still got a battle. We still got a battle ahead of us. So I think the CAG is somewhat of a police getting our voice heard, considering still one of my big things is when myself and Jay and Vivian and go there, we are going to speak for the community when, say, somebody basically from the lower branch of government comes. Well, as soon as they leave and as it starts probably going back up the chain, it probably never reaches the top desk.
Right.
Like you handle it, down there somewhere. You handle it down on the first floor. I'm on the 100th floor. I ain't got no time for this. Well, when we go home, we're speaking for all our family. When we're
You're living there.
Yeah. So, but I think if the CAG does have its good, but I think we need it. But we've got a long fight ahead of us, and I don't know the outcome. Honestly, don't.
Is there anything? Yes. Is there anything that you can, deep inside of you, feel that optimism for the future? Is there something where you're going to, a positive direction that you want to take? I mean, I know you're going to keep fighting, and that's going to be in you. But do you see? Is there something else that you could get involved with that will help you and keep you maybe not as angry, but more thinking about positive and letting people know about the history of your community?
Probably when I speak at other places. That's like one of my big things, because I'm more hurt when I talk about home. And I feel I can help people more when I speak at other places, because mentally it hurts me to know other people have been done wrong, and you know, through different companies. But I sort of try to not bring my pain from home.
Mhm.
But then I find, like, after I'm leaving other places, I'm never left home. And so I find that most of the time I'm, like, beyond stressed. And sometimes I just like to lay down and not get up.
But now when you leave your community, which for all those years when you were young and everything was your cocoon, you do feel safe when you go out and leave your family, and you know you're going back, but it's not that same fear that you had as a young child
No.
of leaving.
No.
And now you're a strong man.
So that much I guess I've grown, but I don't really like to go anywhere without Jay. I mean, I do sometimes because he can't, or Viv, but it's just me, and I always like feel a shadow on my back, but now I'm not too afraid to go anywhere and you know, do what I have to do. So it's not like I have to look over my shoulder the way I always did. So I think I've grown a little bit that way out of, I won't say my own fear, I'll say a fear that was bestowed upon me. You know, my fear didn't come because I brought
Out of
it.
nowhere,
My
right.
fear was pushed on me from others.
But you can certainly feel proud that you've fulfilled your mother's wish.
Um,
You haven't stopped fighting.
and I won't, but I didn't do as I promised, because they're not going to let me be forward. No one is. No one is.
But you've done a lot, Wayne. And
Well, I mean, I've done enough to be proud, but never be satisfied, because I promised her, but I promised myself. And you know how they say the country has changed, time has changed, the government has changed, but the law hasn't. So I have failed.
You haven't failed.
Somewhat, I did.
I hope you don't feel that way. But
Oh, I do. I mean, I know we've come a long way, but I don't
you
promise.
can't change the law, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It
It's
is
set.
what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. So
It's
you,
the saying of today, right?
yeah, so you have to
It is what it is.
accept it,
Mhm.
and
move forward.
yeah, and I can't, you know, so I'm going to keep fighting and all that, but the system hasn't changed, you know.
Thank
That's
you,
about all
Wayne.
I can say.
That's all you can say. Thank you so much for
Very
opening
welcome.
up.